Hey, good evening, and welcome to another Dev Diary entry on my channel here for my game in progress, The Shadow. So, over the past couple of weeks, I got back to working on a few things and finally had some time. It's a busy end of the year for me, so I have to kind of work in the evenings as I used to, but even then I have very little time right now. But I'm still making progress, which is cool, and I want to share the progress with you. So let's first look into a couple of new elements that I added to the level that I didn't have time to work on earlier. So we've got a platform here, which is similar to the regular Droid platforms, but this one will be actually attached to rails and will be a moving platform. The scripting is not working yet. I'll do that sometime next week. But I'm right now focusing more on creating the actual assets in one go, or at least a bunch of them that I will need for interactive objects that I then want to code. Another addition in that sense are the yet untextured feed controller. And this is a setup that basically feeds the huge propaganda screens here and will be hackable by the player so that you can subversively change the propaganda feed here, which is one of the level goals for some missions. Then we have the supply output. This is where droids pick up the delivery droids, the orange ones, these guys. Um, Supply crates or containers that they will then deliver to a slot that feeds it into the apartments of the yeah kind of passive and submerged general public that the player is trying to get out of the houses and realize that they're being kind of brainwashed and controlled. Sounds dark. It's actually a little bit more interesting and funny in the game and the story than I have time to explain here. So, so these will be also hackable via the already known systems here, and then the player can tell the drone to pick up supplies. Supplies are also gained via these elements here. These are water purifiers that handle the water distribution to the apartments and the structures in the city. And of course, the player can hack these too. The purpose of that is not um, like with the feed controllers to um, wake the general public up from their kind of slumber, but the player also needs supplies to keep him going and not lose morale, which enables the player to unlock new levels and new missions and progress in the game. So part of freeing the public is keeping yourself going and keeping yourself alive. There will be other supply elements that the player can collect, like electronics, scrap metal, um, that will help him to update the drone, for instance, or build power-ups that he can use. And then we have a couple of other elements like these very bright neon tubes, vents. These are transport pipes, a transport pipe system that will, yeah, they will be linked to these elements here, and this is how the crates will be transported from the system into these supply outlets that the player and the droids can access. Did I forget something? Um, yeah, the call buttons are now working for the elevators. I changed a few things in terms of lighting and how the lighting of an elevator works. The light is now inside the cage and not part of the overall structure, which enables me to use volumetric lighting on those. A couple of new particle effects are in. And oh yes, there's also a new updated version for the propaganda screens, which now has a glass sheet or kind of like a holographic plate. As you can see, the shader, the texture is a 3D texture that I designed with the shader editing tool ShaderGraph. It's a parallax kind of shader that I created here that makes the text appear like a three-dimensional hologram. The font here is a little bit too small, that's why it's harder to read. The fonts will be bigger and more poignant. It's kind of an homage to the signs when in They Live from John Carpenter. And this whole game is based in 80s culture and games, so I found it very fitting that the propaganda boards resembled a little bit those advertising messages that the character in They Live sees when he puts on those sunglasses that reveal the real message. So if you haven't seen They Live yet, because you're probably too young, then you should try it out. It's a pretty cool movie, and very satirical, but also very on the point, actually. So and we have a couple. There's another type of light source, those standing ones, and they work quite nicely in the overall setup. Good. Anything else? A couple of. I will add volumetric clouds and everything, like a weather system, in a couple of weeks, I guess. And down here is a little bit clearer to see version of the water supply. I just placed them here to see how the translucent part works, the refraction here. It's a little bit hard to see with this one because the refraction is refracting all these elements. That's why it looks a little bit more solid than the one up here, where you can clearly see that the water is kind of refracting the lights and everything in the back. I will work a little bit more on that effect to make it look a little bit more convincing, but that is still something that I need to take care of in the future. Cool, let's take a look briefly at some of the gameplay before I continue working on this thing. Alright, as you can see, I was starting on the roof again. I was actually able to increase the performance quite a bit. Not right now here because this is running in the editor and I have a couple of things running in the background, of course. But pretty much the entire system works quite nicely. The elements hold up quite well, and I like the overall style being a lot looking a lot more like a typical like 80s game from the color scheme, while having sort of realistic textures and materials to it. So the elevator works a lot better now. The lighting the light from the wrist element that the player has to contact his drone is a nice feature to make him stand out a little bit more. And then we have the call buttons here. Calls the elevator, the player can then access it and go to a higher level. And this doesn't just work for this kind of setup, but it's actually a system that will can go up as high as I wanted to. That's the way that it's scripted. Another thing that is finally working, this is the platform, so if the player would be here, pushing up or down, the platform would move. Some of the platforms will be scripted to move automatically, so the player needs to time his movement a little bit in some instances. The switch towers now work The user interfaces, of course, are still temp because I don't have time to design them now. They will be easier to read. But what you can see here is that the whole system of this being a 2D game in a 3D world um, does work now. So you can switch to this side of the building and play in 2D, just like you can go back to the back side. This one is blocked. You can unlock it through a hacking node that you can find somewhere, which is part of the gameplay, part of the puzzles that the player needs to solve, while not falling to his death or being electrocuted or cut up by lasers or running into droids and touching them and being electrocuted and on and on and on. So it's going to be a really, really fun game. What you can see here, what the player is passing by this window element on the side here, this is a test version of a building part that will allow the player to look inside the apartments of the subdued kind of and passive overall public, with a screen in the back here that will display what I call the channel in this world. The channel is basically a media feed that keeps the general public in the rooms, staying indoors, staying safe, while basically missing out everything that makes life interesting, which of course the player wants to change by hacking the system. Okay, so far so good. I'll continue now with building a couple more of these interactive elements and texturing them, adding them into the game, and then slowly but surely coding them the next week. Hopefully from not hopefully, from the 15th, 16th of December, I will have far more time on my hands for a couple of weeks, and I hope to really make some progress there. I also have a temp soundtrack now by DJ Takazaki, who I'm working with on this project, and he's building a really cool soundtrack, and I can't wait for you guys to hear it. So keep watching and following this channel. Then in a couple of weeks you will hear the first actual soundtrack bits for this game. So if you like this, please subscribe, share, hit that bell button, and like the video, because that helps me getting the word out and getting more people interested in this project and this channel. Thank you, and sorry for the wind. It's been a very windy summer evening here in Cape Town, but yeah, that's how the world goes, and next time it's hopefully not the case anymore. Cheers, greetings from South Africa, and have a really good day.